Welcome to Cedar Point, where the wait times are made up and nothing matters. I am here today for one reason and one reason alone, and that is to finally ride Top Thrill 2. Last year, Top Thrill 2 was my white whale. I'm pretty new to the roller coaster hobby, and as a result, I never got a chance to ride the original Top Thrill dragster. So here comes this newer, allegedly upgraded version of this record-breaking coaster, and it was receiving massive hype. It was the talk of the YouTube town, and for me, the FOMO was extremely strong. So I visited Cedar Point several times last year, and despite that, I never got a chance to ride this coaster. And if you are at all interested in coaster world, you already know why.
A lot of breaking news, okay? Cedar Point just revealed a new record-breaking attraction coming to the park next year.
And the new ride replaces the Top Thrill dragster that closed down in 2021 after a bracket fell off the ride and hit a woman in the head.
They say the world's tallest and fastest triple launch strata roller coaster. I don't know exactly what that means. Going in reverse, 100 miles an hour.
Cedar Point opened to the public on Saturday, May 4th. Top Thrill 2 was in full operation then, but just over about a week later, it's been running for like 2 weeks with some previews and stuff. The ride is closed. The park says Zamperla, the manufacturer of the ride, is doing a mechanical modification to the coaster vehicles. There will be an extended closure of the ride. Nowhere on how long that will be or what exactly is being changed or updated. I've been rewatching these videos a lot to see, can I figure out what's going on here, what needs to be done. Cedar Point says they'll be posting updates.
Well, today, the amusement park told 3 News, quote, "We don't anticipate it will be a summer-long closure," adding that they hope to have an update soon. And I think that's what everybody was wondering. Is it going to shut down, for the remainder of the summer?
New tonight, Cedar Point says Top Thrill 2 will be closed for the rest of the year. Yeah, this is a bummer. The goal now is to reopen the ride in 2025.
After months of speculation, Cedar Point has confirmed that Top Thrill 2 will be open when the park opens for the season this Saturday.
With the official confirmation that Top Thrill 2 is actually open for the season, I made it my business to get to Cedar Point as soon as possible before this ride gets shut down again or perhaps even unceremoniously demolished with no warning.
All right, we are through the gate. It's early on a Wednesday, and I'm hoping that will work to my advantage, but it seems quite busy already. And in my mind, everybody is booking it to Top Thrill, but currently the app says we're just looking at a 15-minute wait. I'll believe it when I see it, but if that is the case, it's time to get some laps in.
With some time to kill, I hit up Millennium Force. And then I played the waiting game, checking the app like it was my job, hoping to see that ride status change. Just as I was starting to lose hope, my little eye spied an empty train running on Top Thrill 2. And it was a rollback at that. Of course, seeing a test run doesn't mean jack squat in terms of if the ride is actually going to open, but I took this as my sign to head over there and get in line. The line was backed up pretty far out of the queue, but as soon as I got to the end of the line, they opened up the gate and we were moving in, only to be met with my first hurdle, the lockers, which is mandatory. You cannot bring anything in your pockets on this ride, but the locker line was moving so slow, I made the executive decision to run over to Magnum XL and stash my gear there before running back to Top Thrill 2. I had to leave my phone in the locker, so we'll pick it up after the ride. Okay, this ride, it is phenomenal. It has its drawbacks, but in general, a phenomenal ride, a great addition to Cedar Point. Now, I personally did not get a chance to ride the original Top Thrill dragster, so I cannot compare it to that, but I can compare it to Kingda Ka. So let's walk through this ride. It has 3 launches. The first launch, you are going forward. It hits about a 70-mile-an-hour launch. Now, I feel like on any other ride that would feel really impressive and very scary, but on this one, it feels downright leisurely. Like the first time that I rode it, I was like, oh, this thing is not a good replacement for Kingda Ka. This thing is not scary because when Kingda Ka's first launch hits, it is terrifying. You're going, what, like 0 to 120 in however many seconds. And for me, someone who has ridden a pretty decent amount of coasters in the last year, it takes a lot to really get my heart rate up and to get me feeling scared. But the Kingda Ka launch is terrifying because you are like, we're going fast. Oh, we're still going fast, and we're going faster and faster. In comparison, the Top Thrill 2 first launch is very mild, and I'm sure that they want to kind of like ease you into the thrills. You do that first launch, then you go, what my eyeball is telling me is maybe about halfway or a little less than halfway up that big old top hat. Then you drop down backwards. That's when you hit your second launch, and that's when you start to feel it. But there is something about the fact that you're already going quite fast at that point that the launch doesn't hit quite so hard. Your body does register, I'm going fast, and now I am going faster. But I do think that there's something a little bit lost when you're not doing the launch from that dead stop. It feels less impressive. I am not someone who typically likes to ride roller coasters backwards, and I do think it works quite well here. There is just a fun thrill factor to that where you're not sure exactly where you're going to stop when you're trying to go up the top hat for the first time. And then as you are speeding backwards and you are picking up velocity and you go up that spike, you go up very far. At least that's what it feels like. And from looking at it from a distance, it looks like maybe you could go another 20 feet up or so, but you are really getting up there. And that moment of just stall when you reach the apex of your backwards ascent, and then there's just that like half second before you fall down, and your brain gets a chance to register what it is you are putting yourself through, is just a fantastic moment. And then that's when the real show starts. I appreciate all the stuff they've done up until this point, but what we're here for is that launch over the top hat. At least that's what I'm here for. And as you drop down from that spike and you're going forward and you hit the third and final and fastest launch, it is just a blast.
We're gonna hit 120 miles an hour! Yes!
It is so much fun to go through that. And again, it doesn't feel particularly terrifying because I think you're already going pretty fast at that point. So it doesn't really register as this like speed that the human body should not be going at. It's just like, oh, we're just having a little extra fun right now. And then you start to go up the top hat, and of course you lose a lot of that speed, and you're almost kind of like, am I about to get a rollback? Like you just barely get up over the top of that thing, especially if you're near the back seat. You're kind of like, are we gonna make it? And then of course you do, and then you drop down, and then the ride is over pretty soon after that. It feels short, but actually, according to their signage, it's like a 2-minute experience. Who knows how much of that is when you're like exiting the station or whatever. And honestly, I would say that is kind of my biggest problem with these types of coasters. I have ridden Kingda Ka, I have ridden Accelerator, and it's always like the thing you're here for is the launch and like the big top hat or drop or whatever. But I don't know. I'm not a roller coaster engineer. But it always feels like there should just be more after this thing. You've built up all this speed. Give us some airtime hills, something to float just a little bit afterwards. At least Kingda Ka had the decency to do that. But nonetheless, this is an experience that you really can't get anywhere else right now. With Kingda Ka gone, this is currently the world's tallest. And so for that fact alone, it is a world-class ride. I am so glad that I got to get on this thing. Now at this point, I have done a first row ride, a second row ride, and a back row ride. In my opinion, the best place to sit for this ride is the front because it doesn't offer that much aside from just this amazing visual spectacle, and it is amazing. I'm not trying to say this ride offers nothing. It is an amazing ride. But there's something about when you reach the apex of that spike and you see no one, no cars, nothing in front of you, just that open track, and that is just not even terrifying, it's a magnificent sight to behold. But truly, the benefit of that front seat is when you're going over the top of that top hat and you crest over, there's nothing like it. That being said, I had the same problem with King Ka. I feel like the twist that you do, I don't know the correct terminology for it, but you are not just going straight down, you do a bit of a corkscrew barrel roll type of thing. My problem with this is that I think it robs you of the best visual that this ride could offer. And that is because if you have the opportunity to just look straight down once you come over the crest of this here top hat, how scary is that? That is absolutely terrifying. And I'm sure they threw in the little corkscrew so there'd be like a little flare to this ride. But in my opinion, it obscures the view. I want to be terrified. I want to look straight down into the abyss that I am going down. And when you do that corkscrew at that speed, it whips you around. And I found that to be a little uncomfortable. You're kind of getting this lateral thrown into the side of your restraint. Don't love that. But it also just, I don't know, scrambles you visually so that you don't really process, wow, there is 400 or so feet of nothingness below me that I'm about to go through. It almost like hides that fact because you're not exactly looking where you're going. I understand why they did it. It seems like a fun element, I suppose, but I really feel like that strongly hinders this ride, which is extremely unfortunate. Sure, I would alter that a little bit, but it's still just a phenomenal ride, a world-class ride, and I think it is worth traveling here. It's the kind of thing you have to experience at least once. This type of coaster is never going to be my favorite type of coaster, I think. I think that it is too one-note and it doesn't offer enough, and it's not the level of thrill that makes me want to ride a coaster over and over and over again, especially given the fact that this thing has some monster waits. So let's talk about the waits. My longest wait was 2 hours and 20 minutes. Now that included 2 lengthy breakdowns. My shortest wait was right when the ride first opened up for the day. And even despite some of my fumbles with the locker, I got on in the front row. I had to wait, 5-6 extra rotations on the train to get it, but I got there in about 32 minutes. I immediately went right back in line, and this time it took me about 40 minutes just to get through the metal detectors alone. Then it was about another 35 or so minutes once I got to the true line. I think the line setup, the locker setup is kind of sadistic. One, you have to surrender all of your belongings before you get into any of the lines. And for a coaster where you regularly have these extremely long waits, to go that long without any of your belongings, without your snacks, without your water, without your phone for entertainment, especially if you're a solo traveler like myself, it's a rough ask to have to raw dog 2.5 hours. And it goes without saying that there's barely any theming on this ride. There is just some very long switchbacks, and there are, to their credit, a few TVs that are playing fake ads that are kind of themed after the various coasters around here. They had like the Dragon, Iron, motor oil, etc. And then it feels like every 15 to 20 minutes they'll play some kind of like mini game. It'll be like a shell game, like, oh, is the trophy under this helmet? And then they mix them all up. There's a little video of some race cars racing. You get to place your bets on which color is going to win. But in general, there's not a lot going on. And in fact, there's like long stretches where they were playing music videos but without the music playing. So you're just like watching Beck up there dancing but with no sound. But there is still some of the ambient sound that they have that's like people working on a car, I don't know, engine stuff, tools clanging around happening. So you're just like, it's this very like weird dystopian thing where you're like, I'm aware a performer is performing. I can't hear it. I just hear people banging tools around. So the line is incredibly bare bones, and you have to wait in it without any of your stuff. And that sucks. But this is the price we have to pay for safety. People are ding-dongs. People try to take out their phones and film stuff. So I understand why they have to do it. I just feel like they don't really care about our comfort. And, you know, you look at a ride like Velocicoaster, which is not a perfect system, but they have the lockers pretty close towards the end of the waiting system, and then it is free, and then they let a certain amount of people in at a time and wait for them to clear out before letting more people in. The situation here is that there is a line, and then before you get to the metal detector, there are lockers, and if you don't have stuff to put in a locker, you just get right in that line for a metal detector. Otherwise, you have to go get in line for these lockers. There are only 4 kiosks that you can use to get your locker. There are free ones, or you can get larger ones that are paid, but whichever one you choose, you have to go through this kiosk to get your locker assigned to you. In the best of times, these are incredibly slow processes. Like if you've ever been stuck behind someone that's trying to navigate this locker for the first time and they're breaking out their card and trying to swipe and it's not working and they don't remember the code they're typing, like all that stuff, it is like painfully slow. Now multiply that times 50 people waiting to do that, and you're waiting for 50 people, half of which have probably never used this system before, and that adds so much waiting time to this queue, and that is painful. So in my humble opinion, you should go stash your belongings. If you're already paying for like an all-day locker like I was, go stash them at Magnum XL and don't deal with the wait at Top Thrill 2. Once you get your stuff in those lockers, then you have to get in line for the metal detector. They sadistically only have 2 metal detectors and 1 singular staff member working each metal detector. One of those metal detectors is devoted completely to the fast lane. So all of us pedestrians without the fast lane are going through 1 single metal detector where they have, again, 1 employee to manage it. This 1 employee is calling people through and clearing them, or if they're not cleared, that red light comes on, you hear the beep, you have to step off to the side and get wanded. Now, in a professional theme park, they have a second person with a wand so that that person can get wanded while the rest of the ride moves through. That is not the case here. If someone messes up, as a lot of people don't seem to understand, you cannot bring anything through these metal detectors if it's in your pocket. If it's not strapped to your body, you cannot bring it in. I cannot bring this hat. So the entire line stops if someone needs to get wanded. And then that person's confused, and then they're told they have to go to the lockers, and they have to get directed to the lockers, and they have to like either cut through people to get there. It's a whole lengthy process. And then you have people that have gotten to that point, got wanded, had to put something in the locker, and then they're coming back, and they are seemingly allowed to just sort of cut back to where they were, which is fine by me. But that adds just like a whole other level of everyone just seems very confused about what's going on. The wait to go through the metal detectors was actually longer than the wait once I had been through to get on the actual ride. And that's fine because it's not like the metal detectors are preventing people from getting on the ride. There's still a line there. So it doesn't really matter if you get there sooner than later because it's not like you're missing out on some ride because you had to just stand there at the metal detector. The lines are everywhere. My problem is this ride provides shade in one lengthy section, but it's not the section right before the ride, the section that people are guaranteed to be standing in, and it is not the metal detector line either. And since you can't bring a hat, you are baking. You are baking out in that sun, and it is painful. And have I mentioned, there's some pretty long waits. So to me, that just feels kind of sadistic that they would arrange things like that, and it feels like they didn't really care about the comfort of the patrons. But wait, there's more. The other problem with this locker setup is that there is, I think, a lot of room for abuse and line cutting. The lockers are not like cordoned off. They are very far from where you get let out from the ride, so you have to walk all the way back to the front where the line is, and then there's like a separate little entrance. It's like, hey, come in here to retrieve your stuff. There's not like a fence or anything. There's just like these little flappy gates, but literally no barrier on either side, and there's no employee there telling people that they can't just walk through there and then cut the line, because there is a line to get to the line for the metal detectors, for the lockers, all that stuff. So if you just walk into the locker retrieval section and then you walk up to the metal detector line, in theory, if the line's very backed up, you could be skipping hundreds of people. I did watch that happen a handful of times, and that is annoying. And I'm sure Cedar Point is not trying to spare an employee to stand there and make sure that doesn't happen. So that's a bummer. So all of the accoutrement around this ride, I'm not a huge fan of. And I feel like they could have done so much better. And I feel like objectively the things I pointed out are true. Now the subjective complaint that I have about this ride is that the theming is boring as hell. I know that there are a lot of people out there who love NASCAR and love racing and all that stuff. I am not one of them, but I feel like the aesthetics of that sport is just boring and uninspired and uncreative. And so the fact that they had a chance to tear down this ride and start over again, that they just were like, okay, it's just the sequel to what was here before, is so unimaginative, so boring. And that also equates to really boring merch that I for sure do not want to wear. But I mean, like, you have this gigantic, super tall coaster, and it looks like a rocket launch station or something. Why not make it outer space themed? Would be at least a little bit more interesting. I feel like there's so many things that they could have done with this coaster, and everything from the creative level is just incredibly boring. I will give them theming points for having a stadium that you can sit in to watch the launches. I do like that. And there is a little like 3, 2, 1 go light up thing that does happen before the launch, and I will give them that as well. Let's talk about the restraints. Let's talk about the cars. I find them to be pretty comfortable. I like that it is just one thing that comes over your shoulders onto your lap. It's not sitting on your shoulders though. And I have found that to be a very comfortable ride. Every time I sat in it though, my lower back gets pressed into this really hard plastic, and I feel that after I get off the ride. So not a huge fan of that, but that is more of a minor nit to pick. Oh, also, the test seat for this ride is right in front of the metal detectors. Now, if you've been following along, you know that there is a lengthy amount of line waiting before you even get to the metal detectors. So in theory, if you want to test this seat, you may have to wait in a half-hour line just to test to see if you're going to be able to ride. So I feel like I've spent a lot of time complaining about this ride. I do have a lot of nits to pick. I think that the infrastructure around it, the theming, all of that needs a ton of work, and it's just really surprising and sad that this is what it is, given that it was a ground-up rebranding and theming experience and all that stuff. But I will ride this every time I'm here if the wait isn't too bad. I would certainly never wait more than an hour and a half for this ride ever again. And it pains me that I don't have a fast lane this year. But Top Thrill 2, it's an excellent ride. Don't let anything I say deter you from trying to ride this thing. Just know what you're getting into. Put your stuff in a locker at a different station if you are already paying for a locker. And bring your patient shoes. And your screaming shoes. Those are shoes, right? Well, that's a wrap on Top Thrill 2. If you're new here, I am trying to ride 200 roller coasters in one single calendar year, and you can follow along that journey at the video right here.